How many of you have an iPod, an iPhone, or a Mac? Probably most of you. If so, you're holding a piece of Steve Jobs' brain. Apple is now a common household name. Its products are treasured and loved because of their sleek form, easy style, and for being user-friendly. I found Steve Jobs to be an amazing person. He has done so much for our generation by thinking differently. Steve Jobs is a man like no other. He created devices that changed our way of living by making it simpler, all the while being anything but simple. In this speech, I'll be talking about Steve Jobs' childhood, his inventions, and business life. At birth, Steve Jobs was put up for adoption by his birth mother, but ended up in a loving and caring house. He was adopted by Paul and Clara Jobs, who was an average family living in California. He always knew he was adopted, and his parents also knew that he was special because of his love of learning and technology. At a young age, he tested out of 2 grades and moved from 5th to 7th. He was now bullied by his older students. He was very stubborn, so he forced his family to move across town so he could change schools. Here, he met Steve Wozniak, who was an older boy who had few friends, but they both shared a love for technology. They soon became best friends. In Walter Isaacson's biography titled Steve Jobs, Jobs told him that, quote, "Woz was the first person I'd met that knew more about electronics than me," unquote. After becoming friends and joining a computer club, Jobs and Wozniak took a chance on designing their own computer. Woz is the real mind behind Apple I and II. Okay, this is the old first Apple that they created. When people hear Apple, they instantly assume Jobs was the creator behind all of it, but really at first he just marketed and sold the computers. Quote, "Jobs had a bravado that helped him get things done," unquote, said Isaacson. Once the company was up and running, Jobs made something of his own. And in 1980, he was kicked off the Lisa project and started Macintosh. The first Mac was made in 1984, said Hamilton in his Steve Jobs article in the American History section of ABC Clio. It was the first personal computer with a mouse before he had to use a keyboard to type in all the commands. And here's a Mac. Or that's Apple II. Okay, that was Apple I, this is Apple II. And then there's Macintosh. That was the first one. What do I have? Oh, and this is, okay, that's different. The iMac, which is another solely Steve Jobs creation, was an all-in-one desktop computer with a disk drive. It has a blue see-through case. Quote, "Jobs has always insisted that the rows of keys on the circuit board look neat, even if they'd never be seen. Well, now they were," unquote, said Isaacson. By 2000, music was a huge part of society. The iMac didn't have a CD burner, which is the main form of gathering music. Steve Jobs decided to create a program that would make gathering music simpler. He created iTunes. With that came the iPod that could hold about 1,000 songs and fit into one's pocket. This revolutionized Apple in the music industry. Eventually, the iPhone was created as well. And here's all of them. That's the very first iPod that he made. And then here's all the other generations, and then the Nanos, and obviously iTunes. They're pretty basic. Not only was Steve Jobs an amazing inventor, he was also a great businessman that was resilient and strong when it came to his opinions and leading a company. After Apple was created, he bought Pixar, which is a computer animation company. It competed with Disney at first, but eventually merged together under Steve Jobs. And together they created the first ever completely computer animated movie, Toy Story. Steve Jobs was not the first CEO of Apple. Fred Anderson was. But under Fred Anderson, the company started doing poorly, so they had to let him go. Steve Jobs took over Apple as a replacement until another CEO could be found. He did such a fantastic job, and they couldn't find anyone else, that in December of 1997, Steve Jobs was named the official CEO of Apple, stated by Quasar in his Steve Jobs article in the Salem Press Biographical Encyclopedia. Steve Jobs is now running 2 companies, Apple and Pixar, said Quasar. He blames this time when he was switching between both jobs for his health problems. He eventually quits Pixar, though, to focus mainly on Apple, which was his first and true love. Steve Jobs was raised by a father that said, "Even the smallest parts matter." He transferred this to all his projects. Nothing was overlooked and everything was under his control. He was always stubborn and got his way. He was very persuasive and persistent. Few people have the mind... Ooh, do I have another? Okay. Few people have the mind to do everything Jobs did, like running 2 companies and still inventing products that changed the world. Unfortunately, in 2011, Steve Jobs died of pancreatic cancer that he'd been battling with for many years. The man that created a phenomenon was dead, but no man is truly dead when his name and ideas live on.